The main goal of our discussion today is to assess the current situation with the energy sector in the Republic of Armenia with an attempt to define the long and medium-term development directions and opportunities thereof. We're going to be discussing energy independence, dependence, and also interconnection with the economic development. The main speakers for today, Dr. Rouben Indjikian, Doctor of Economy, Geneva Webster University Economics and Management Professor, also Professor of Global Energy Economy, and also renowned expert in international trade and finance. Armen Sedefyan, an entrepreneur in solar sector, SOLGÉS Energy founder and executive director, also a member of Amaras think tank, the latter being an active project in the sector of agriculture, energy, and energy efficiency. Myself and Gaik are also represented here. We're going to be moderating through this discussion, myself being a consultant on environmental management and renewable energy, and Gaik being energy consultant. We're both the co-founders of the Energy Leaders Initiative. Without further ado, I'd like to give the floor to Dr. Indjikian, who is going to present his observations about the energy sector of the Republic of Armenia and also the global energy transition, as well as the adaptability strategies. Thank you. Please, Mr. Indjikian. We can't hear you, Doctor. Please unmute yourself first. Thank you, Hasmik. I'm very glad to use this opportunity to speak to such audience, young specialists and maybe experienced ones about the energy future of the Republic of Armenia. I've started my career as an energy economist, and one of the first books I wrote in Soviet Union related to the countries exporting oil, related to the global economy with oil exporters. So then I joined the UN Conference on Trade and Development, and there I wrote a world report. It was called Trade and Development. There I wrote about the oil market, and then I create this digital economy report, where I described the use of information technology in the sector of oil. And now, every year in summer, I lecture at different universities, I lecture energy economy, and I invite world-renowned experts, and also from the international agency, and also from British Petroleum, for example. So every year, and for the last 5 years specifically, I've been considering the energy transition, the global energy transition as such, and COVID now is a new problem. So I think that the transit as such is going to be more rogue and more determined just because of the COVID. Let me try explaining what I mean. Recently, the World Energy Agency wrote a report on how the countries should behave to reach zero CO2 emissions level by 2050. And we clearly observed many organizations there speaking of renewable energy, as you would say in Armenian. Yes, thank you. So the big role of renewable energy, and there is a big expert present here. As regards that renewable energy portion, or the share in the global energy, has grown quite quickly. It means that the role of oil and coal will gradually reduce, and renewable energy and gas will continue. So Armenia now is trying to base itself on that, on gas specifically, and on renewable energy, meaning Armenia is trying to make use of the solar power and wind, but of course quite developed hydropower generation that we've had since Soviet Union. We've had the chance to build a nuclear power plant, a big chance for Armenia, and now the nuclear power plant generates half of the consumed energy in the Republic of Armenia. So reduction in the oil and coal markets happening. Gas, natural gas still remains relevant. Solar, wind, and hydro become more important. So Armenia has all the components. And Armenia is specialized in these sectors of energy generation and may quite quickly move forward even faster than the transit is taking place, and even become a leader in the process. By that, or by doing that, Armenia will establish a more sustainable sector, which will become a significant locomotive, one of the locomotives in the development of the country's economy. I'm quite an optimist here. I think if Armenia is able to collect all the resources in the world to develop these resources, these directions, meaning the resources in the diaspora, and of course the resources present in various international organizations that are committed to helping such countries as Armenia in making that transit faster. For example, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the World Bank, the IFC, the Asian Development Bank. So we must be able to make the best use of the resources they offer to make investments in the development of the solar and wind energy generation. We have to make use of these opportunities and have more modern energy sector. Well, the other side of that is we're going through the fourth industrial revolution now, and in the fourth industrial revolution we can clearly observe the opportunity to do the things better, not only in terms of developing the industry, but also by means of turning the energy consumption into something more effective, by reducing also the energy consumption per capita indicator, not impacting the economic development indicators on the other side. There are such technologies present in the world, like the Internet of Things and the blockchain, and also the artificial intelligence. So we can essentially use all that in order to correctly choose the right path, I mean. So, and also many are working from home now. It definitely reduces the need for space, meaning offices, which means new buildings are going to be built in a way so that they are energy efficient, which means development of more modern, advanced energy sources and more effective and efficient use of energy. So these are essentially the prerequisites of success in terms of more sustainable energy economy in the Republic of Armenia, which will then become a foundation for a general economic structure or system. Thank you very much, Indjikian. Naturally, there are many questions now. But before we turn to the part for questions, let me give the floor to Mr. Armen Sedefyan, who will present the Amaras think tank and his observations about the circular economy in Armenia. Then we'll move to Q&A. Armen? Well, first of all, thank you very much to you and the future Armenian, naturally, for a very interesting initiative. So I'd like to speak about Amaras think tank, established with the help of diaspora representatives, different experts in different sectors. Well, I'm sure you'll understand think tank. They say the analytical center in Armenian. Well, it's fine. It's close. Translated, it means the analytical center. Well, the specificity of a think tank as such, even we've been through a war, we were all quite concerned about everything that was happening in Armenia, and we tried to do some constructive steps forward to bring our help to Armenia and to linking Armenians together. So the work that's being done now for several months are holistic, because this is the approach. Like the example of a doctor, for example, if the doctor wants to treat the patient, he or she may not look at the patient with only quite specific prism. So the same is about the Armenian diaspora. It is clear that Armenia cannot exist without diaspora, and diaspora cannot exist without Armenia. In case of education, Armenia cannot be observed alone as such, and we should understand the role diaspora plays in the sector. The education, culture cannot be observed separately, autonomously. The security of Armenia may not be observed separately from the region, and maybe also separately from the interests of the super states, which are ultimately, I guess, not very useful for the country. And finally, healthcare may not be observed separately. So that is why there are different specialists in this group, and also some foundations operating in France now, operating for several years already in Armenia, like the French Armenian Fund, Santé Armenie, or Health of Armenia, the Armenian Health, established right after the war with over 200 physicians invited from France to Armenia to help. Okay, the energy now, as the main topic is energy. Our approach to the sector is also global. We think that Armenia may be the green nation for the world. The reason we mention that is the following, as Mr. Indjikian quite clearly described. Armenia has all the natural treasures to make use of in an attempt to become independent in the energy sector specifically. We are now moving towards the point where we do not want Armenia to be observed as a country which advances only in accordance with experiences created by other states, trying to copy somebody else's solutions. We think the idea that Armenia can become a leader can be innovative and creative, not only in the sector of energy, but in different other sectors. So that's the point we should be all looking at, because if you see what you have and how much can be done by the diaspora Armenians, and also the most experienced specialists in the diaspora and the young specialists in Armenia, we are sure that we can create all this. To speak about hydrogen, to follow the global energy market, then the most advanced states have special strategies related to hydrogen. Why was that strategy developed? Because the whole world is facing a disaster now, which is a war pending to stop the climate change. So now there are 47 degrees in the south of Canada, which has never been the case. So we have to be very, very decisive in the changes to be made. But the changes that are not made quickly in the world, like in France, for example. In France, we are an exemplary country with carbon zero, because there are 56 nuclear power plants, but they're obsolete, which means they have to be decommissioned once. There is also a big threat related to nuclear power plants that had never been taken into account when designing these plants. And the issue has not yet been properly solved, specifically related to the radioactivity levels. Yes, Armenia has its nuclear, but it's also old, it's obsolete, and we can clearly observe signals from the Council of Europe, apparently the European Union, to decommission the plant. By 2016, the nuclear power plant generated 32% of consumed energy in the country. Now it's more, because we lost the hydropower plants in Artsakh. So I have the data, and it's been mentioned that 32% of the power generated in Armenia came from hydropower plants. So we lost many hydropower plants in Artsakh, but in addition to that, we are able to produce solar energy, which is only appreciated because voluminous work has been done in the country due to the efforts of the young specialists. So we work with operators, and we work with very good specialists. Sevak Gevorkyan, for example, specialists, they go to other countries and they try to consult with specialists and see how much power we have in Armenia, existing, ready to work, and we cannot miss this chance to rebuild the energy sector in Armenia completely and use all the natural resources. In conclusion, to be brief, we should think about a green nation, smart country, green nation. So, for example, we have a threat in the region of Syunik today. We know because of loss of lands, the agriculture has suffered significantly. And we need to help them so that the farmers have some new opportunities. So, due to the work that's now being done in Amaras, we may create a big greenhouse in all communities. And that greenhouse may use the solar power. And that will solve the issue of water also, to create small smart cities, small systems, small structures, the main goal of which would be making the communities energy independent, and water also, and food, finally, and work, I mean, jobs, so that people do not leave their hometowns and find opportunities elsewhere. So build smart cities throughout the whole country in an attempt for an independent energy system. This is it. Thank you. Thank you, Armen, for quite an interesting presentation with many very interesting ideas. There is a question in the chat. How can we join Amaras? Oh, very soon. In order to join, you will have the opportunity. Amaras is going to have its office very soon in Armenia, and all these ideas I just expressed I turn into reality, so that we start doing things, trying to raise funds, and we also approached Professor Indjikian with all the questions that we have, and he helped us in pulling this and pushing it forward. So in the whole world, I should say, this is happening. And today I read EBRD planned over a 10 million project for entities in the sector based on green technology. So there are programs, there is support, we simply need to implement them. Thank you very much. It's very interesting, and I hope that they will all take place. There are several questions we have prepared already. And the first question, how would you describe the current situation of energy efficiency in the Republic of Armenia in terms of diversification, sustainability, security, and efficiency? What's the situation in Artsakh? And I would ask you to take Artsakh into account in every reference. Dr. Indjikian, please. We can't hear you again, by the way. Not yet, at least. Yes, thank you. Thanks for the question. In my introductory statement, I was trying to describe the sustainable part of the energy in the future, and Armen also came up with quite interesting ideas, specifically the smart systems that the local economy will benefit from. And it's related to Armenia, it's also related to Artsakh. And apart from that, I also understand that if Artsakh has lost its hydropower, or most of it, then there is an issue of finding energy sources for Artsakh. I don't know how the issue is going to be solved. Nevertheless, the current energy sector of the Republic of Armenia is based on gas, nuclear, and renewable energy components, which means the energy sector of Armenia doesn't have coal, and the oil is first of all related to changes in transport. And as far as I understand, the government should think of organizing the transport meaning use of transport, meaning multiple electric vehicles. There is a possibility to turn transport and non-transport parts of the energy sector into things more sustainable, in the sense that we will be able to use the sources of energy once, and in that respect, Armenia simply needs to continue making use of those sources in a more effective manner with some new materials and with less losses. So because we know that the solar and the wind generation need maintenance. By the way, Armenia exports two very strategic metals, which are important for the energy of the future, because these metals are used for energy conservation, for producing batteries. It's copper and molybdenum. Oil is not a technology of the future anymore, but copper and molybdenum, yes, they can. So in that respect, maybe instead of exporting raw materials, we may think of creating products, technology that may serve Armenia and provide for the future development. So creating new opportunities, and we're now moving towards global energy, and it will be more based on more effective consumption of electricity, which means energy generation will turn into something more modern, also energy conservation, naturally, with the use of some new materials. And of course, the use of electricity is going to happen in a more effective manner by use of the Internet of Things and new culture, of new corporate culture, I mean, to be used as opportunities for creating new. Thank you, Dr. Indjikian, answer. The next question, maybe Armen or you take it. What do you think, given we spoke of the innovations and new tech, what do you think about the SMR and also hydrogen? Do you think this is realistic? Please. Meaning organizing the generation in Armenia. The participants, by the way. Let me answer, try answering, yes, at least. Okay, so, as regards scientific issues, we need to be prepared. I mean, there has to be some research carried out to be able to answer that question. This is one of such questions, and a short answer will be really a professional mistake, a gross one. However, as I said, in order to produce hydrogen, of course, we need water and we need the equipment for electrolysis. So we have that in Armenia. Electrolysis is produced in Armenia, and we can produce that in the future. I mean, the technology is there, though the power generated is expensive, but to compare it with the new generation power plants, and nuclear power plants specifically that they built in China, but you can see France is also a leader. As for 12 years, France has been trying to build a new generation nuclear power plant. They've spent $12 billion. So you should forget about it. You should forget about nuclear power plants and try to make the most of the spending on the innovative technology, specifically the electrolysis. But I mean, but producing hydrogen is not new. There is nothing new about it. This is something we're trying to bring into this energy and environmental mix that we have, because we've seen that it's the only way of producing clean energy based on natural resources and everything. So creating hydrogen through electrolysis and use that hydrogen. By the way, we have the big advantage in Armenia. Armenia has a very advanced gas supply network, and it's one of the leaders in the world in terms of the coverage of the gas supply, which means gas reaches every point in Armenia. And these pipelines can be used to transfer hydrogen, of course, with certain changes made in the system, but it's the reality. And there are enormous investments being made there already in such opportunities. Hydrogen is being produced in the northern parts of Spain. It has to be transferred through pipes to Germany, imagine. And over 200 billions of an investment have already been made. So these are solutions already. By the way, megawatt is 150 euros for nuclear power generated. In Armenia, check how much solar power we're able to generate. As far as I understood, the latest tender was about $20 per megawatt, if I'm not mistaken. So it's essentially the cheapest source of energy. Producing hydrogen is not relevant anymore. Well, thank you very much. There are many questions coming in. You mentioned several times the part of finance, internal, external, foreign capital. I'd like to know where you see the future of our energy sector in terms of funding. Is that the state budget solely, or it may also involve the international capital, foreign share may grow, I don't know, cheaper naturally? Well, I'm sure there are examples for both strengths and weaknesses. Please, the question is addressed to both. Okay, then let me start. Let me start the search for a good answer to your question. Well, I think the funding is based on the existing energy capacity and the changes that might take in it. There are two very important parts there. I would say three in the Armenian energy sector. As Armen mentioned, those are the first, the gas pipes and gas energy. That's the nuclear power plant, and that's the hydropower plants. Additionally, There is also solar power and wind. There are great opportunities to develop here. And as Armen said already, there is also the possibility for hydrogen. Okay, now as regards the traditional energy generation in the Republic of Armenia, and also the traditional parts of the conversation like gas, hydro, and the nuclear power plant, I think that the gas and the nuclear have to be continued. I mean, Armenia should continue its cooperation with Russia there, and provided the gas price is decided based on international relations, communicating just a general idea of what the relations are. I'm sure it does not reflect sufficiently the market price for gas. So I think this is where the state, the government of Armenia, has to try negotiating the rate and getting the biggest opportunity for investments, so that gas continues to play the important role till Armenia manages to find the alternative energy possibilities. The same for the nuclear power plant. Armen mentioned the French are not able to modernize their nuclear power generation. And as far as I understood, Armen, you mentioned the Chinese succeeded. Did I get you correctly? They managed to build the new generation nuclear power plant. So you're trying to say that Chinese are more advanced now? Is that what you're trying to say? Than French? Well, which is quite strange, I should say. Nevertheless, I think Russia has its share in the nuclear sector. Maybe Russia is lagging behind the European and the American markets, but it's a competitor. Nevertheless, if the Europeans want us to make changes in the operation of our nuclear plant, then it's quite a difficult situation and quite an interesting offer at the same time, because we're highly dependent on Russia, not only in terms of energy, but in terms of military cooperation. So we have to be realistic. And I think that in terms of nuclear power, the future of development should be based on the negotiating skills of the ministries and the prime minister, so that they're able to push this forward in terms of new technology. And of course, try to rebuild the nuclear power plant. So, as for the international organizations, financial institutions, well, I think they will be playing a significant part in terms of improving the energy efficiency. And I'm sure there will be new methods and some new construction and new approaches to saving energy and new approaches to getting the best result with the use of least power. And of course, the solar and the wind and hydrogen and hydropower generation. So I mean, all these branches, they may absorb a lot of private investment, a lot of support from international organizations like the KfW, German bank, can participate, and I think they do already. The US Exim Bank and etc. So, and of course, there are large insurance companies like Euler, Hermes, Kofas, and Atradeus that are able to insure the capital, the Armenian risks, based on a proper analysis thereof. So Armenia as a state, as business environment, should try to do everything to get a higher rating internationally, so that the foreign investors believe that they can work with Armenia in long term and get their income and be pleased with their businesses in Armenia. Thank you, Dr. Indjikian. Thank you very much. Armen, if there's anything to add to this, please. You don't. Well, I would say Mr. Indjikian has comprehensively covered the topic. Yes, but there is another question in terms of the global development, if you don't mind. In plain words, what do you think? In which direction should Armenia and Artsakh be moving? Towards full energy independence, or it should be based on the, I don't know, primary sources, or in terms of shareholding maybe, or equity, or I don't know, maybe we are ready to agree to the market rules and give ourselves to the processes of integration. So I mean, this series of discussions of future Armenian are aimed at giving us the understanding of how we see the energy sector of Armenia and Artsakh in 10, 20, or 30 years. What do you think? Should we be open, or we should provide for the independence independently from increase of the rates and prices? I may try that, Armen, if you don't mind, and then you can continue. All right, so even the largest countries of the world, when speaking of energy independence, and by the way, this happened in the United States, reflected in statements by 8 presidents of the country stating that they should get rid of the oil dependence. There's this famous comedy center where a famous comic, an American one, essentially ridicules some of the American presidents, starting from Barack Obama going back to Nixon. All right, so that's about independence. Well, of course, the countries are interconnected in terms of oil and gas, because the oil is essentially the largely traded product in the world, comprising 600 to 700 billions of a turnover, because there are more petroleum products instead of crude oil. And so crude oil is one of the important products in international trade. Coal is also huge, but there's been increase in the trade of coal as well. As regards electricity, I'm sure you know that different countries try to sell their spare electricity to one another, and that's more, of course, regional trade rather than international, because it happens among neighbor countries. So once again, proving that Armenia quite successfully sells electricity to Georgia and Azerbaijan, getting some gas from Iran, as a barter. So that's the first argument. Even the largest countries are interconnected, so there is no independence, absolute independence as such. There is interdependence, as it's called in English, which means it's not independence, but it's
the level of interdependence,
meaning to which extent the countries are interdependent or interconnected. As for the smaller countries, being small, they have to adapt. They have to find their places in the international trade and try to be as open as possible, given the fall of the Industrial Revolution taking place in the world, when goods and services are sold on the web. So, and the internet uses electricity, which means we are quite interdependent and well interconnected. And the answer to your question is yes, we have to find our place on that market. Not because there is no regional energy sector because of the geography that we have, and we're also interdependent on Georgia and Russia, not Turkey and Iran. So yet we cannot speak of any regional substance. By the way, Azerbaijan was trying to push us out of the whole energy activity, all these pipelines going through Georgia, etc. You understand. So we should be developing it through Iran, Georgia, Russia, meaning south, north, north-south, which is more realistic. But north-south means international, which means also that the situation we're having now is quite complicated. Meanwhile, as I said, the capital should come from the whole world and from the diaspora, but not only from the diaspora, other investors and international organizations. So the answer to your question is, we have to find an optimum, some optimal participation in the distribution of efforts in the world. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Indjikian. One question to you, Armen, provided you are a specialist of solar power, an experienced businessman. So the question is there production of solar panels in Armenia? I'm sorry for my Armenian. So does Armenia produce solar panels? To the information that I have, there are two small producers of solar panels. Number one is Solaron, doing that for quite a long time. I don't know the other brands, but it's a small company, a small producer. But apparently they may not be classified as concordant with international standards, because they sell only for the local market and they do not have a certificate even yet, to the information that I have, at least. Two words, if you don't mind, to add to the answer to the previous question. My opinion and approach are slightly different from those of Mr. Indjikian. Well, on the issue of energy dependence. Well, I might consider Armenia an island in that respect. And there are many islands in the world that are completely independent in their energy sectors. Well, they're not independent from oil, the oil and petroleum in order to make their thermal plants work, but they're moving in different directions today. The reason I'm saying this is because my whole professional career since very young ages started on islands, and everything was there at the time. And at the time, solar power generation was widespread, and this is 25 years ago, by the way. And the wind turbines, I saw them there first time in the Caribbean, and everything was there, and they worked very well. And the most advanced laboratories were installed on that island, one of the islands. That is why I should say Spain has been quite advanced in that sector. And recently, we had an experience in Cyprus, and we're still carrying out an assessment. So we all know half of Cyprus was invaded by Turkey, and they have serious problems. And only recently, 2 months ago, if I'm not mistaken, an agreement was signed with Israel and Greece to establish an underwater connection. The reason is to give the opportunity to Cyprus to sell energy to these countries. So the issue is not that Cyprus, being an island, is not able to solve problems. They still are, and they have very serious initiatives to turn their sector into more independent. If I'm not mistaken, they're trying to establish 1 gigawatt of generation now. Well, I should say this must not be a problem for Armenia, because as to 2016 data, Armenia consumes about 6,000 gigawatts per hour of energy. So when there is a peak that goes up to 2,500 gigawatts, especially in winter months, so the consumption peaks in winter naturally. By saying winter, we mean October to February. And in summer, that's about 900 megawatts. So we're not discussing a country with a very big demand here. I mean, if we start investing in hydrogen, then I'm sure this all will be done in parallel to the development of the economy, because there will be factories and workplaces. Because when we converse a generation of hydrogen, it does not mean we are going to produce only that. These are going to be large plants with many workers, with engineers who will be advancing in technology and everything. So I mean, it has to be managed, of course. So my approach is slightly different from the one of Mr. Indjikian on this issue. It is important to learn of the opinions, different opinions, in an attempt to come to a compromise and understand where we have to move towards. There is only one word I will add to this. I don't think there is a big difference in what we said. Of course, if you establish the solar and the wind power generation capacity in Armenia by production of solar panels locally, or anything, or if you depend on technology like a nuclear power plant, in that case, even you will still have to raise funds to invest in production and generation. So, provided it may require big demand for capital, especially hydrogen, because it's technology related. So does Armenia have that capital is a big question. I don't think it has. Hence, Armenia will have to bring it from outside. Now, as regards producing inside, generating inside, and consuming inside, then of course you produce to and generate to consume. Who do you sell it to? It's energy generation, maybe Georgia, and maybe you will have to generate it locally somewhere. And do not forget that the main consumer of power in Armenia is population, and then agriculture, and then industry. We don't have industry, that's the thing. So we should try thinking of how we should develop the industry, which might come up with some new energy demands. There's a big issue of developing the economy in general. Well, I'd like to add that by the end of 80s, Armenia produced 15 gigawatts and exported approximately the same as it exports today. Now we generate about 6 gigawatts, and the plan is by 2030, if I'm not mistaken, to increase it up to 12 gigawatts only, which means the generation in Armenia is not going to develop, the power generation is not going to develop that much. There are 2 minutes left. A very small question. 2040, green and hydrogen generation, how much will be in percentages? Yeah, your forecast.
Yes.
Well, I think that well, hydrogen, carbohydrates, well, I'd like to have it, but life shows that the energy sector is very dynamic, and you cannot just get rid of some sources of energy like gas or oil. You may get rid of coal, but the rest is going to be very difficult. So I think at least half of Armenian energy generation will be hydrogen. All right, thank you. Armen? Well, I should say we should make a shift. It's a lot of time till 2040 yet, by the way. We have to be very quick. There are serious problems we have to solve. And all the energy that we have been inputting into this, like we do today and will be doing in the future, has to be aimed at very, very specific, effective steps in an attempt to provide all the support to the government of the country so that the latter knows that we're moving in the right direction, to prove that they are effective so that we're able to get to the results faster. So I should say bringing it down to 2030 instead. May I add a point? Very importantly, for that we need to have a developing country and well thought industrial policy in the energy development sector. So the government should do everything to promote the investments based on public and private partnerships, to try to develop these new energy sectors faster, like solar, wind, and hydrogen. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Indjikian. Very comprehensive discussion indeed. Unfortunately, the time's up. There are many questions, and we have definitely recorded everything, and I'm sure that we will be able to respond to some of the questions in written. Thank you very much. Hasmik, anything to add? I may only once again thank the guests, Dr. Indjikian and Armen, Sedefyan, and also to all the participants for their questions and for the discussion, because there are quite many opinions in the chat and Q&A. So I'm very glad that the society is so much involved in these discussions. And this was the second already in the energy sector. We are still going to have more and many more guests. Follow Future Armenian and join the initiatives. Thank you once again to our guests, and Gaik to you especially, and everyone. I may wish you good health and nice evening. Thank you.